So instead of having to write this, 5, 10, 100 times, maybe we could do something like this. And then what are we changing? Some sort of number. We'll call it a counter, okay? Okay, so that'll get us over, right? And then if we go, so, now if we can just give our counter a job. So what in this case, what does our counter start at?
Always start at 2.
Okay, so now whenever you're getting into code, there's certain things like we learned about functions, we learned about operations. So operations are like up and down and over and in and out. Functions are where we add a number and we've got to take a bunch of those operations and put them in. This thing's called, oh boy. Forget what it's called. So we call it a loop. And there's a bunch of different loops and things you consider, one of which is a for-do loop. And say, for this cup is yellow, I shall make tea. For this cup is blue, I shall make coffee. So it's one of those things. If something, for each of something, you have to do something. And then you can go back up and do it again. So, this counter, that's going to change, right? The counter is the number. Each counter, that's so. What does our counter start as? 2, right? So if we wrote for the counter equals 2, that would basically be this line, right? So the up and over, and the number 2. So now what if the counter equals 4? Which one would that be? Jenna? The second one. What if the counter equaled 10? What line of code do we have then? Yes. So how can we get the counter to count? Any ideas? There's lots of different ways to do it, but this is our own class code, so how do we want to do it? We're going to start our counter off at what number? Ava? 2. So and what's the counter going to go to? What's the biggest number counter can be?
Counter can go only up to 10.
Okay.
Because that's the bottom row.
Okay, and we're counting by how many?
2.
By 2. Okay, so the counter is going to be the numbers 2 to 10 by 2s. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's walk through this. Counter, first time through, counter equals what number?
2.
So then we go up and over, how many? 2. Then we go down, and did not compute. And then it goes back over how many?
2.
Okay. So then if we go, say, go to the next counter. So then that'll go, or you know what? We'll use this word from class. Repeat. So that goes up here. The next counter, first counter we had was 2, but now we're counting by 2. So counter will be 4. So up and over how many?
4.
Down and back over how many?
4.
Repeat. Where do we go? Back to here, and back up to the top. Do we like repeat or should we call it back?
Back.
Repeat, back up.
Repeat.
Okay, we'll go with repeat. And you know what you can do if you want to be fun? You can always draw an arrow if you want to. Because sometimes you get really crazy and do a whole lot of these. We'll get to that, maybe. So let's just, there's things when you're doing real code, you can sometimes have a little thing so you know what's going on. So we'll just mark our counters over here. This is for our own viewing. So we had a 2, then we repeated, we went to 4. Now to repeat, what's our counter at now? 6. So we go up and over, 6. Down and back, how many? 6. And then we get to repeat. What do we do?
8.
Okay, what does counter equal now? 8. Counter up, over, 8.
Down and back.
Down and back, over how many?
6.
8. And then we get to repeat. What do we do?
10. Go back.
Okay, counter equals what now?
10.
10. Up and over how many? Down and back over how many?
10.
Repeat, but wait. Are we done? Because the counter's at 10, so then we just go to whatever we want to do next.
3. How about CR?
Counter. How about just C? C sound okay? C is for counter?
And for repeat, we can do an R.
We could do repeat. Counter is what we call a variable, because counter is always changing. Counter went from 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 to 10. Repeat is a command. You know, it's telling you to do something. So we can knock this down to it's getting shorter, isn't it?
Yeah.
So now that will cover the bottom row. Now, because it'll make your life easier when you have to do them. But you still have to go to this part first. And then look for these patterns. See, hey, we have a whole bunch of stuff that repeats with one thing that changes. Maybe we can do a loop. Well, how does that change? Does it change by 2s? What if it's the second row? Now this is going to mess everything.
Yeah, it's going to be 3.
The second row is
Not as much.
3, 5, 7, and 9, right?
You're still adding up by 2.
What has changed? Are the things that repeat the same?
Yes. Because you're still counting by 2, but you're starting off with 3.
So then for the second row, we can do a different loop.
Because you go 3, 5, 7, 9, that's going to be still counting by 2.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want because it's your code. So, but what line will we have to change on this to do the second row? So the counter starts at what number?
3.
And it goes to what number?
9.
And how are we counting? There we go. Now, what about the third row? It starts with what number? 4? It starts with 4, right?
Yeah. Should I check what?
We'll just go with 4.
Yep. And it's on the picture in the front too.
So the next line would be what? The counter goes from what number?
4 to 8. And then the next one,
Counting by,
2.
and then what about the next row?
It's going to go 5 and 7. And it's going to count by 2 still. And then the last one's easy. It's just 6.
Yeah, and then the last thing is just right.
6 and 6.
Now, we won't cover this right now, but next week when I come in, since now we can basically do it for each row, we have our own loop, right? Okay? So then we have above this, hey, you have an eraser, it probably works better than my finger.
Mr. B, would you have to change the letter C for each row?
No, because we would have,
You'd
it
have
would go, after the repeat, it would go to the next function.
Okay.
Okay, so then above this we have for C equals, let's do that one, we did 3 to 9, right? For the second round.
Mm-hmm.
For this we would have, what was it? For C equals 2 to 10 by 2. Up over C, up over C. And then now repeat